I'm here today at Larford, beautiful lakes, and it's in the county of Worcestershire, about 4 miles from Stourport. And the lake itself used to be a massive lake, and then they built a causeway down the middle. And in fact, on that causeway today, there's a match. They have matches here all the time. It's what you call a commercial fishery, but this lake is called the Specimen Lake, and there's some really big fish, big bream, small bream, big carp, there's everything. But today, I am specifically fishing for bream. That's the day, really, that's what I want to catch. Now, it's a perfect day for bream fishing. Perhaps it's not so good for filming, but we've got a lovely wind on the water, it's overcast. It's been really hot, then the temperature cooled down, all the fish came to the surface. Then the temperature cooled down, I mean it's mid-June, so then the temperature cooled a bit, and the fish have now gone down really where I want to catch them. They've gone down closer to the bottom, and that's what I want to do today, to show you how to catch bream on the bottom using lots and lots of feed, you know, being really aggressive, and this is a brilliant fishery for it. So, off to the mixing buckets. My ground bait mix for today, now remember, we're fishing for bream, so everything I've got is bream orientated, and my favourite liquid additive for bream is Brasm. It really is an extremely good attractor. And all I do, I've got a 3-pint tub of water and a few squirts, well more than a few squirts because I love this stuff, into the water. That then will go into the ground bait. So a few squirts of Brasm into the water. And the ground bait itself also is a bream ground bait. It's from Van den Eyne, of course, that's all I ever use. It's Gold Pro, and it really is a protein-rich feed. It's got lots and lots of feed, lots of attractors, and it is exactly for bream, hybrid skimmers, anything like that. And it's a little bit of a sticky mix. And I've got 3 kilos of it because I'm going to put a fair bit in today. I think we're going to catch loads of fish. So 3 bags of this in. I've already opened the bags because when you try and open them for camera, they always take ages. So I've already just cut the bags, opened them. So 3 bags. Like that, 3 kilos. And then you can add the water that you've got with your Brasm to it. So you've got your water with your Brasm, add it to the ground bait, and when you add it, really stir it hard. As you tip the water in, really whiz it round as much as you can. Get some water in there. And this is the first job you want to do when you come to the bank. This is the first thing you want to do, is get your ground bait mix, because it always takes a little bit of time before, you know, it's a sort of a biscuit meal based, and it dries out a bit, and then you have to add a little bit more water to it. So I usually add it, leave it, and then riddle it through. But that's already looking quite good. And activate it as much as you can. Get your hand in there and really stir it, really move it, get that water moving. And I can already feel this is quite a sticky mix. I'm going to put some balls in today, you know, some hard balls, and I want to pack it with loads of stuff. So I want a fairly sticky ground bait. I'm whizzing that round. I won't do it all. What I'll do is I'll show you a little bit of how you would riddle it for the camera, and then I'll do the rest in a minute, because there's quite a bit to riddle off. But already that feels nice. Then you need a ground bait riddle, diamond mesh, nice one to cut through. This diamond mesh cuts through the ground bait. And you'll see if you put the ground bait on the riddle, and if you riddle it or run your hands through it, if you have a look, you'll see all the big lumps it leaves behind. See all these big lumps? All you have to do is just carefully with your hand, just rub your hand on the top, and these lumps are sort of the damper parts of the ground bait, and they will, all of them will go through. Don't waste anything, all of them run through. And then mix up the two, because you've got some damp, you've got some dry stuff that you riddle, and then you've got some damp stuff as well. But once you do that, you can see you get a real even consistency. Just finish all that off, and then we'll go through about what bait we're going to put into the ground bait and how to ball it in. 5 minutes later, the ground bait's settled, a bit more water in it, and it's perfect. Now, I'm going to work out how many, I think I'm going to put about 12 balls in. So really you need to measure. Don't want to put all your feed in that bucket yet. So you can, I usually measure, you know, 1 like that, 2, 3, 4. How many balls of ground bait they're going to be? 9, about 10, because I'm putting some feed in it as well, and that should be then, that amount there should be about a dozen balls, and it's quite a bit. I've left a bit behind because I'm going to add, once I've started fishing, they sometimes want a ball of chuck, so it's good. And these, you need some particles. Ground bait's good, the smell to attract the fish, but you also need some particles. And I've got here casters, which really are one of the favourites for Bream. I'm going to put a good handful of those in. Good handful of those, probably more than half a pint there. Some 3mm pellets. Once again, pellets are a cheap feed, you know, a cheap bulk feed. So I'm going to put quite a few of those pellets. They love pellets here. And then, this might be the bait today, some sweet corn. Just a little taster of sweet corn, because I may well be using that on the hook. Maybe worm, maybe sweet corn, but I'm going to give them, always give the fish a little taste of what you're putting on the hook. Mix it up so that is a really, really rich mix. If you look at that, tons and tons of particles, the odd grain of sweet corn, and then you need to ball this up to get ready. I want to make some balls, so you need to ball it. So I'm going to do a dozen of these, but we probably won't show all these. So a dozen of those good sized balls packed full of feed. And it's quite sticky, this, so it's easy to do. It'll go straight to the bottom and then melt. Lovely. Just sort of roughly squeeze it in a round ball. Try to get balls of similar size if you can, but that is quite a hard ball. It's not going to break up when I throw it, and it's going to go straight to the bottom. Nice, just a couple of squeezes. Keep it fairly round. But I've made this ground bait a little bit on the dampish side, and then you'll find it's easier then to ball up like this. If you see all that feed that I put in is now all inside those balls. I mean, sometimes it's a good idea, if you're fishing somewhere, to come down the night before. They call it pre-baiting, and put some balls in, but I haven't had a chance to do that, so I'm going to do it exactly now. And it sometimes takes a little bit of time for the fish to actually move on the feed, but let's see how many balls we've got there. About 10, I think. Should be enough. 10 balls, that'll be enough for the initial feed, and then I'm going to top up afterwards. The bait's all mixed and ready to go, but where am I going to throw it? You have to think about where, and you need to explore your swim. You need to plumb the depth to find out exactly where you decide to feed. I'm going to start fishing on the pole. I've got a good sized plummet. This one is one of those cork bottom plummets, but that will give me the exact depth. I've got a rough idea. I've already roughly worked out where I want to go, but I just want to run through it with you just to show you exactly how to finish up. Now when you're checking the depth with a plummet, and I see loads of anglers, you really need to lift that plummet off the bottom. You need to lift it off the bottom and make sure that it's directly below the pole tip, otherwise you'll get a false reading. So it's directly below the pole tip. I'm going to drop it down You can see the plummet there has hit, can you see there? It's just hit bottom. It just went bang and then sort of collapsed. It's a bit difficult with this wind, but you mustn't really, wind like this is brilliant for bream fishing. It's exactly what they want. Now if I go a little bit further, you'll see it's gradually sloping away from me. You'll see that'll gradually go down a teeny bit more. So we've got a very, very gradual slope. So I'm going to fish today where it's going to be reasonably easy to fish at about 13 metres. Bream, remember, sometimes they can be a little bit scared and they won't come in close. So you need then to just go that little bit further. And I think 13 metres should be all right. And look where I've actually set the float. It's hit the bottom now. So I'm fishing almost what I would call a float over depth, which is probably something like 9 inches. So we're going to fish on the bottom. There's a bit of wind on the water. So I'm going to lay some line on the bottom just to make things easier for me. So that's it, explore the swim. We've got a goodish depth at that. It's probably something like, probably 8 foot, so it should be reasonable for catching fish. Now once you've established that, once you've established the depth and decided where to fish and have picked your marker, you can then feed your ground bait. And to do this, you really need 2 hands free to ball in your ground bait. You need to leave your pole in the rest and then to throw the ground bait. And I like to use my pole as a marker. You can guess it if you want and throw it, but it's nice if you've got just a rough guide of where you're going to throw your bait. So I usually put my pole out in pole rest, then you've got 2 hands free to throw the ground bait. And don't worry about throwing every ball in one spot. You know, you can't, if you threw every ball on top of one another in an area like that, how can you get a big shoal of bream in that area? You can make it even like a dinner table, so the bream move around a bit. Don't worry about throwing them all in exactly the same place. And I've already set my pole rests up. You need, I don't know if you can see that front rest. There, I've just let my float go out there. I've picked a marker on the far bank and I'm going to try and throw my ground bait around the float area. And if you can look at, see that front pole rest there, it's not exactly a V roller, it's got 2 straight sides, which in these windy conditions, you have to be very careful. If you use just a normal V roller, your pole can blow out of it. And in fact, in the early days, before they designed this type of rest, I had that experience even in a World Championship. You know, a real windy day and the pole blowing out. So the pole's set nicely, and even though it's windy, you can see it's quite stable. I've just got the tip of the pole under the water, just under the water. That just helps stabilise it a bit. And then the float is showing, so I've got a guide. I know I'm going to hold the pole there. I can then feed my balls of ground bait on the float. Now I've just thrown these just a little bit short of where I'm fishing, but don't, as I said, don't get them on a dinner plate, don't worry about it. Just a nice-ish area around where your float is, just a bit shorter. Plonk, see them big balls going in, packed full of feed. And it will always take a little bit of time. You know, I've balled in like that, there's 10 balls in a reasonably tight area, and it will always take a little bit of time for the fish to respond. You know, they are attracted by noise, but particularly big bream, take a little bit of time to come into that, but at least we know we've got a good bed of feed on the bottom. And that's what bream fishing's all about. It's getting some feed in You know, get a lot of feed in early if you can, a nice, and as I said earlier, if you can, in fact one bream just topped, you know, just come up to have a look. It must have heard the ground bait going in, and when you see bream top, you know you're going to catch them. So just get a nice bed of feed. If you can do it the night before, do so, but on the morning it's okay. But just a good area, bream can consume. They're shoal fish, they can consume a lot of food. I've given all those balls, I've just given them a little bit of time to settle. The fish won't go on them immediately. And when I start fishing, you know, you never know what you're going to catch on. My favourite is 2 red maggots, just to see what's going. Two red maggots will always get you a bite from something. You never know what it's going to be, but because there are a few carp in here as well as bream. But remember, we're fishing on the bottom, we've balled some ground bait in. So 2 red maggots, and I'll run through the rig later. I'm fishing with an Olivet, so the bait gets down through the water, fishing on the bottom. And always remember where you've fed. You know, you've picked that far bank marker, where to feed, so you drop your float. It's very easy through the course of the day to actually move around without knowing it. So always get the float back in that far bank marker position. And that's just beyond where I've fed. I'm going to start adding a ball of ground bait or 2 soon, but that's just beyond. I'm really hoping that the bream are going to come in from the outside, and the first thing they come across is my bait. I've fed those balls just a little bit, slightly inside that. As I say, they don't want to be exact anyway. You can't get everything on a. You don't want to, you know, you just want to feed an area where there's bream. This wind is really blowing today. Just pulling that float up a bit more. And then soon I'm going to start adding ground bait as well. Oh, the float shot off then, but that probably wasn't a bream. Bream usually take a little bit of time just to look at the bait. So I'm trying to get those 2 red maggots, and because of this wind and a little bit of movement, I'm fishing over depth. So once the bait is on the bottom, then it's fairly still. Just edge the float, get it set right, you know it's on the bottom, and then try to hold it as still as you can. There'll be some movement in the water today because there's a wind on it, and it's just drifting slightly with the wind. But all that feed has gone in, so I know there'll be some fish around somewhere. It's just a matter of a little bit of time that it takes for them to come in. You can see the presentation there is just about nice. It's just drifting slightly downwind, but that's okay. A little bit of movement is always good when you're fishing. And as usual with all this sort of fishing, normally you have a little bit of a slow start, but then it builds up. And once the fish start to arrive and compete for food, then it can get really good. And I'm straight into a small fish, but I suspect it's probably just a small roach or something like that. And it is. Just a small roach, only about 4 or 5 ounces, but this will happen at the start. You know, everything comes into the feed until the bream move in. Well, that didn't take long. My first bream. What I did though, I switched from maggot. I'd had that roach on maggot and I went on to sweet corn. Just 1 grain of sweet corn. I don't think it's a big fish, but it's what we're after. Probably is. This is what you call a skimmer. Sort of a bream around about £1 pound. They're still bream, but it's a nickname for a smallish bream. That took 1 single grain of sweet corn. Look at that, about £1 pound. And this is normal for bream fishing, this slime up the line. If you have a look at this fish, it's not a big fish, but just have a look. If you really have a look and see this slight indentation there in the head, that is a true bream. When it goes dead level, it's more, it could be a hybrid or a different fish, but that little indentation, the fins are black tipped, the body on these smaller fish is sort of silvery on the bottom and dark on the top. As they get older, it gets more bronzy. They just took a single grain of sweet corn. And they are very, very slimy. But that's a good start straight away on all that feed. That sweet corn really worked. There's all little shapes, different shapes of sweet corn, and I like to hook mine through the top end, that's the smooth end, and push the hook. You wouldn't believe there's different ways of hooking sweet corn, would you? And push the hook right through and bring it out. If you have a look at that, I bring it out sort of underneath. Just bring it out underneath. So that when you strike, if you miss a bite, the chances are the sweet corn's going to stay on, but the hook is buried. Just the point's coming round to hook into the fish. Already had one on that sweet corn, I'm sure. And there seems to be a lot of fish there now. But of course, in this sort of lake, there is a real mixture of fish, so you never know really what you're going to catch. And even though I've fed all those initial balls, when there's somewhere where there's loads of fish, then you can top up the feed. So almost every cast, I'm going to think about throwing a ball of ground bait in. Here's the bite, and I'm in. And it's a bream. That's brilliant. I think it's the sweet corn that's done it. Sometimes, you know, when you come fishing, it's good to get a little bit of local knowledge. And I know they have been catching a lot of fish here on sweet corn, a lot of bream. You know, the bream seem to prefer it. This is a bigger fish than that last one, but do you see how quick it took? And you can also see where it's blown the sweet corn up the line and just lip hooked the bream. Oh, that's a beautiful fish. A little bit larger, they're gradually getting bigger as they move on to the feed. And that's a much better fish. There. Have a look at that. It's a beautiful fish. See those black tinge fins? The sweet corn blown up the line. Just a gorgeous fish, probably about 1.5 pounds that one, but straight into that sweet corn. This is a commercial fishery and they do put corn, they put maggots, they put everything in, but bream do love sweet corn, particularly in the summer months. Perfectly lip hooked, 1.5 pound bream, lovely. That swim's really alive out there now. Just cast out again and straight away into another fish, but it took it on the drop, so I think there is an odd carp in here, as I said earlier, and I think it's possibly, that may not be, it might be a big bream, but I'm guessing it's a carp. Seeing by how much elastic it's got out of there. But this will happen. I mean, if I can get, it took it on the drop, this fish, if I can get to the bottom, then I think I'm going to get bream every time. But the thing is, what you've got to think about, we're fishing for bream, but I've balled it in, and now it's a fish every cast. As soon as it gets out there with that single grain of sweet corn, it's a fish. This is just a small, lovely little common though, beautiful. Nice in between the bream I'm catching. They do whiz around though, but I just caught a glimpse of it and I think pretty sure it's a small carp. But in a water like this, where there are lots of fish, it takes some getting in, because I've got bream elastic in. I haven't really got carp elastic, which, you know, is a bit softer. It's a lovely, beautiful common. Look at that. Probably about, lovely. I don't mind catching other fish. Yeah, a lovely common carp, look at that. That took that sweet corn, where I've balled in, of course, there are carp here, and it's just coming and taking it on the drop. They're nice in between bream, aren't they? I love them. Now this corn is really working well. And if you hook it like I explained earlier, you'll find that you'll miss a lot less bites, and the hook's buried so the fish don't see it. Takes a little bit more time to get it on, but it's well worth it, and you just leave the point showing and you get perfect presentation. You can't, if you look at that grain of corn, you can't really see the hook, and that's the idea. It's almost like burying a caster. And I know, you know, I know from past experience, even in Ireland, sweet corn is a terrific bait for bream. Still got that lovely wind on. It's making it a bit hard to fish, but it's still great. And every time I'm putting in a ball packed with casters and those 3mm feed pellets, just throw in a ball. Remember to get your float in line with a marker. You've got to, there's so many fish here. Boom, nice. Did you hear the clump that made as it went in? Nice big clonk. There's quite a few fish here, so you've got to feed fairly aggressively. And because there's so many fish, and I'm after big fish, and I'm squeezing that ball fairly hard so it goes straight to the bottom. If I was to cloud it, there's a bite now, look. Just dipped it under a little bit. There it goes. Bang, oh, I just missed. The trouble is with sweet corn, you have to wait a little bit for the bite. I missed that, went and dropped it back in and caught a small rudd. I won't count that one. I don't believe that, there is a few fish here. I missed that fish, but it didn't, you know what I was saying about the corn doesn't come off the hook? And look, I just went to drop it back in and the little rudd took it off the top. Oh dear. I'm guessing, wouldn't you think there's a few fish here? You can't get your bait back in the water. Little tiny rudd. I think I'll slip him straight back, won't worry about him. So corn really is the killer bait. Usually it deters those sort of fish. See, like that rudd I just caught, you expect to catch that on maggot, but not quite so much when you're fishing sweet corn. That's why I'm fishing it. Just taking a bit of time. So I just bumped a fish before then, but obviously didn't lose my bait. Pull that hook round there. I've got that Olivet down to drop the bait down through the water. Now if you, when you're feeding with a pole, if you have a look at where I've placed my knees there, if you stick the pole between your legs and just rest your arms, this is the easiest way to hold a long pole when you're feeding with ground bait. You're not firing with maggots, but this is the easiest way. So I've got my two legs there, pole tucked between my legs, and you can almost only just have your fingers under the pole, and that's enough. You're really supporting it with your knees, which really are quite strong, and it's so I can hold it with one hand. It's blowing quite hard, one hand there, left or right. And when I go to feed, all I do is hold the pole in my left hand. The actual butt of the pole is there between my legs and resting on my box. And then it leaves your right hand free to squeeze the ball of ground bait. So you've got the ground bait squeezed, you've then got your marker. And if it's a long distance, I usually stand up, just sort of stand up, and then you can throw the ball of ground bait, bang like that, right on your float, bang. So you've fed without having any problems. Then your float's in the right position, there's the bite, and there's the fish, bang. And we're in straight away, another bream. This is incredible fishing, it's fantastic, there's so many fish here. And that fish was right, I've just thrown in that ball of feed. Look at that, another bream straight away. immediately. Oh, they are going mad today. Another one of those, about a pound, just over a pound. Almost skimmer size this would be, but terrific fish. So clean. Look at that fish is absolutely perfect. It's just like a miniature version of a big bream. Look at the perfect fin shape. That slime up the line. Beautiful eyes. Look at the eyes. They're black eyes. But that's a small bream, which we call a skimmer. A lovely fish. Now the rig I'm using today is a sort of a medium heavy rig. It's not overly heavy, I'm fishing for bream, but there are a few carp here, so I've had to consider that. And the hook is a 16 Camasan B911. It's a barbless hook. You have to use barbless hooks on all these sort of fisheries. And then I'll just hook that on the end of the pole. I've then got a hook length about 12 inches of 3 pound breaking strain line. That's 0.14mm. Can you just see the knot there? I've just got a knot there with a number 10 shot above it, just above the hook length. Another 5 inches, 4 or 5 inches above that, I've got another number 10 shot. And then above there, I've got a number 10. I've also got a small shot there. That's just one that I needed to balance up the float, but it's not really doing any practical work. The main line is 0.16, which is about 4 or 5 pound breaking strain, so it's plenty strong enough. And then I've got a brass olivet. It's a Drennan inline olivet, and I've plugged it so I can move it up and down. That little shot is just, once again, just to balance the rig. It's not doing anything. And then we've got this all the way up to the float there, which is a 1.5 gram Browning Nevis float. It's got a carbon stem. I like to use carbon, much better balance. It doesn't twist over. Balsa body, and then a fibre bristle. A fibre bristle that really shows up in the light, but well, I've got white water out there, so can you see where I've blackened that top? I've just used a black marker pen, a waterproof marker, to blacken that top, and on white water it's much better for seeing, but a little bit of orange there to show me lift bites. And up to the elastic, and this is a number 12. It's a Browning high vis, but it's fairly softly set. Once again, I know there's 1 or 2 carp here. I can't fish too light. It's just fairly softly set, and then just attached to the connector there. So, and that elastic's through 3 sections. A number 12 elastic through 3 sections, which should cope with everything we've got today, and it has so far quite easily. I want to get out there quickly if I can. I've just run through the rig with you, but the problem with these fisheries is if you leave your peg for too long, just tuck that little sweet corn there. If you leave your peg for too long, then the fish go. They eat up everything you've put out there, and then they clear off. But I've just got into a nice rhythm of catching, which is lovely, you know, and fishing is all about rhythm. It's all about feeding, about going in and every time putting that ball of ground bait, and I've packed that ground bait with feed. I've packed it with casters, I've packed it with pellet, and it's almost solid particles going out there. There's a fair bit of ground bait, but when I throw a ball out there, it's almost also fairly, and I always feed to the bites. You know, if I'm getting plenty of bites, then I feed more. And you have to work out how much to feed each time. Say I wasn't getting any bites at all and that float nearly went, then just give them a little bit of time. Bream need a little bit longer than other fish. So when you're feeding, you have to work out, if you're getting bites pretty quickly, then you can feed every cast. If you're not getting any bites at all, then you have to take it a little bit more careful. But if they're coming, then you can be fairly aggressive. There's the bite, boom, in again, another bream. Oh, this is fabulous fishing. Really working to plan. Every cast, in, bang. See how that elastic is working? This feels like another goodish fish. They're all, yeah, another one's coming in. probably about a pound again. One of those sort of that would be between a skimmer and a bream. But these are lovely. Bream are the perfect match fish. Now just have a real look at this as a perfect example of those really black fins, black tinged. You know, that is a pure bream, and that recess, just that recess in the head there. Black tinge, recess in the head. These are perfect bream, and they're a great match fish. You know, they weigh quite heavy. They're a shoal fish, so when you're on them you can catch loads. My best ever match weight has been bream. This was in Denmark about 5 years ago, and I weighed in 237 pound of big bream. But it wasn't that hard to catch them because they're big and bulky, and you can just keep catching and catching. That really, for a pleasure or a match angler, is a real attraction of bream. They're a shoal fish, and once you're into a shoal, you can catch loads of them. Milk's gone. Oh, that last fish whizzed off with it. Another one took it on the. Oh, this is incredible action. Another one took it on the drop. Feels like a bream, not a big one though, but it's just non-stop action. Brilliant fishing. Just felt like a bream. Do you know what this is? It felt like a bream. When it came to the top, I thought, oh no, it's a roach. I want to show you this fish because these fish are quite common. They swim. It looks a bit breamy like. Have a look at the fins, a bit, but not so black tinged. This is a roach bream hybrid. Quite a common fish. They can't breed, they can't reproduce, but they grow to sort of, a big one would be about 5 pounds. But they fight a lot harder than a bream. You know, they're sort of a cross between a roach and a bream, and they fight harder than both. But roach bream hybrid, a very common fish. It's where obviously it's where the roach and the bream have spawned together. They've cross-spawned, and that's what you get. But you haven't got that real dent, slight dent, but you haven't got that real dent that you get with a true bream. But you've got the slime, and you can see you haven't got the red tinged fins of a roach. Roach bream hybrid. A lot of people think, oh, that's a bream, but it isn't. Not quite as deep as a bream. I'll just recap on that. Look how easy it is to hold the pole, but you can get the ball of ground bait in your right hand, get it ready, and then feed on your float. I just threw that ball on the float, it went straight under. Oh. Another good fish. It's just constant, non-stop action, all sorts of fish. Feels like a decent fish as well. As I say, these bream, match anglers particularly love to catch them. Another one just slightly bigger, one of those sort of pound plus. Perfect size fish this. And you can see that slime coming off the hook. Oh, these are gorgeous fish, just one after the other. shoal fish, as I said. And the blacker those fins, then the more pure the fish. Just a real black tinge, and look at that slime. And you need to make sure you take that off the hook, off the line. It's round the hook and the line, only just lip hooked. Absolutely beautiful. That'll be in about 3 or 4 years, that'll be a £5 bream, £4 bream. Lovely. And then just make sure you get rid of this, just this, I don't know why, but if you leave that slime on the hook, you don't catch. Just get that out of the way, leave it. Beautiful fish. It's incredible, the action now. But it's because, you know, if you just... And fishing, I always say, is all about feeding. Just as long as you keep, particularly here where there's a lot of fish. You know, a ball of ground bait, these fish probably devour that very, very quickly. So if you don't add another ball, they eat it up and then they go to the next person. So you really have to work out about feeding. And as long as you're getting bites, then you know that's okay, what you're doing is right. If you stop getting bites, then you have to think. But I'm not having that problem today, am I? It's sort of run every cast. But I'm making sure that when I ship out, I just go out with the pole, drop that, I've got that nice olivette, drop it in, drop the bait where that last ball of ground bait went, in that area. And then just hold the pole between your legs. It's so easy, even in this wind, it's so easy to hold that pole. And then just feed a ball of ground bait. And there's so many fish there, boom, clonk, right next to the float. And can you see how that black, if I lift that float, you can see the orange, but when I let it go, look, it drops down to the black and it's gone. Oh dear, that one's shot off. I don't know what that was, probably a carp. Shot off at an angle. Probably because I just fed that ball of ground bait. It really excites the fish, you know, they go mad. You throw a ball and there's so many fish there, they're tearing into it. And you know you're going to get another bite. Bream tend to, don't hurry it though with bream, they tend to just take a little bit of time to get hold of the bait, and the bite's a bit more, would be slower than a carp. Just drop it in and hold. Float lifted then, and there it goes. Bang. I missed it. I do miss the odd bite, but not very many. But that bait is still on. The way I hook that grain of sweet corn, even though I missed a bite, the corn is still on, stays on the hook. That's probably one of the best tips I could have given you today. Oh, look at that, the float's lifted up. That's a fish on the drop, probably a carp, grabbing hold of it. Still left the sweet corn on. That's why it's a great bait to use. Worm also is very good here, but the problem with worm, there's also loads of perch. So if you put worm on the hook, you're probably going to catch a load of perch as well. But perch don't like sweet corn. You know, they won't eat sweet corn, or they won't give you a problem. Now that float is lifting, bobbing, moving. It's just all action. I love it. And that wind has just dropped a little bit as well, making it more pleasant. A little bit overcast, and I'm in again. I don't know what this fish is. Another bream, I think. Oh, this is terrific. Just one after the other. Feels like a bream, but here it could be anything. You never know what you're going to catch. It's an incredible lake. What is it? Oh no, it's a tiny, what is it? It's a little black carp. I've never seen anything like this before. I thought it was a bream, but it's just a little jet black carp. That is a strange fish, that one. That is jet black. Well, I say jet black, you don't usually see them this colour, do you? Must be a special type of carp, that one. Ooh. I'm always doing that, playing with the fish, and look, just a little jet black. It's a common, but it's actually jet black. But because it was small, I thought, oh, well, it might have been they fight a bit harder carp. I thought it might have been a reasonable bream, that one. So loads of fish in the peg. I must show you my new hook length knot. I learned it last year. Can you believe that? I'm still learning. And you lay your hook length line and your main line together. There they are lying together. Just wet them. Just use my fingers just to wet them. Any knot you tie, you should wet. So there's the two pieces together. If you form a loop like that, can you see that loop? And then just give your finger a twist, and that will twist the line. You need to hold that twist then to make sure it doesn't come undone. But you're left with a loop of a little bit of twisted line. Put your hook length back through there. And there's a little tag of your main line as well that you can put back through there as well. And the clue as to whether you've done it right, have a look at that. And can you see how it looks like a figure of 8? That's what you must get, that figure of 8. And that's where you get your strength from, the figure of 8 knot. And just pull them together. I've already wetted them. And you get an incredibly strong, and please don't ask me the name of it. I don't know the name, but that is an incredibly strong knot. Just trim it off. Just trim it off closely to the knot. You can't hardly see it, but it's incredibly strong and you get perfect presentation. Bream are quite slow feeders, so I don't know if you notice that the strike is just a lift, a sharp lift. I mean, you have to go through that sweet corn and lift into the fish, but it's just a nice, just a lift, gentle lift, like a sharp, not hard, but like a bang. You do have to set the hook, and every time it's a fish. And now I just know that there's just lots and lots of bream there. Oh, this is another beautiful fish. Look at that. Oh, it's a gorgeous fish. Proper bream. Smallish one, but lovely. And they're really on that feed now. You know, that ground bait, it's a slightly larger fish, that one. Look at that, well over a pound, but the ground bait is working. They've come onto the ground bait. It's just a little bit deeply hooked, that fish, so I need my special disgorger. But they're onto the ground bait and they're there every cast now on that ground bait. That's it. Brilliant, that. Lovely fish. Now, although I'm catching on sweet corn every cast, of course, bream fishing can be a mixture of baits. And if you see here, you know, I've got worms there, which are great normally for bream, but there's quite a few perch in here, so I'm a bit wary about using them. But when I put a worm on the hook, now these are quite large, what you would call, they're called dendrobinas. They come from Holland. When I put a worm on the hook, all you do is you break the worm in half, and then on that broken bit, if you put the hook through that broken bit, like that, the broken piece, it goes through very easily. But the fish then really try to get to that smelly piece there, where you've got that real broken bit. That's where your hook is. That's the bit that fish try to grab hold of. So that's really the correct way to hook a worm. If you want to put two pieces on, just break it and then put two broken pieces on, rather than hook the worm through the middle. Two broken pieces, and that's the best way. And the other alternative you've got is caster. And bream love casters. That's why I'm feeding loads of them. Double caster in particular is really good. And for double caster, what you do is you take the hook and you go through the You know the end where there's sort of, it looks like two eyes, where the two eyes of a maggot are, the fatter end. Go through that and thread that caster partly on the hook. That's one. And the other one, you have to hook a little bit different to that. You have to sort of start the hook off in the middle of the caster. This is the best way to hook double caster. Start the hook off in the middle and bring it out. Just bring it so the hook point only just comes out. And there the two casters lay side by side. And that's the way to hook double caster. So sweet corn's been the killing bait today. That's been the best bait on the hook. But then we've also got worms. I've been feeding with these 3mm pellets just to keep the price down. You know, they are less expensive than casters, and the fish love them here. Bream love them. But they're a good solid bait that you can get into your ground bait. And then we've got the maggots that we started with, and then the casters. And it's actually turned out a bit better now. We've got a little bit of sun coming through. It started windier, but a little bit of sun coming through. Now it's getting quite warm, but yeah, it's still a brilliant day for bream fishing. It's amazing, these swans they're just feeding round. When I'm throwing a ball of ground bait out, there's one or two bits that come out of your hand and drop, and these swans find them. Anglers really are swan friendly. You know, they'll always come round where you're feeding ground bait. And of course now we're not allowed, well, we don't use it anyway, we don't use lead shot, we use all non-toxic shot, anything below number 8s. But this is why, because irresponsible anglers just used to throw their shot down in the water. Used to just throw it down when they'd finished fishing, throw it down, and of course the swans come round to feed on the ground bait that they've thrown in, just at the edge when they've finished their fishing, and they picked up the lead shot. So it was anglers being a little bit irresponsible, but now no lead shot are allowed, and we don't have that problem. But you should never anyway discard your shot and throw it into the water. You should always take line and shot home with you. And then these happy fellows here, well, all we do is feed them up, and you can see that they are, well, they're really happy with life. They're getting a load of free food. Well, I try and catch some fish. Just missed a bite then. And they're not disturbing my swim. Well, that's my last ball of ground bait. I can't believe these fish are taking it as soon as it goes in. Feels like a good fish as well. Well, it's my last ball of ground bait, so I'm going to have to finish on this fish unless I want to mix some more up. But it's been a brilliant day's fishing, you know, typical bream fishing, piling the ground bait in. This feels like a nice fish as well. Piling the ground bait in, lots of it, getting the fish coming into it. And this is typical of how bream fight, that real slow, sluggish. Well, this is a nice fish, £1.5, £2. Look at that, you see that sweet corn blown up the hook. Oh, that's a lovely fish, Terrific fish to finish up on, you know. It's been a fabulous day anyway, but a fantastic conditioned fish. Look how clean that fish is. Let me get it. When I pick bream up, you sort of, the best way to pick them up is just to pinch them round there. Just hold them. Look at that sweet corn. Beautiful, probably £1.5, but lovely condition. And a great fish to finish the programme on. And just remember, feeding, continual feeding, all the time. These fish are on the bottom, so we lay your line on the bottom to catch them, and then just swap baits to find out. It's just lip hooked, that one. And just swap baits to find out what they're taking. But that's a great fish, a lovely one. A really brilliant day's bream fishing.